She once ran for Congress, so I guess this is her career nadir. It's Nomiki Konst, founder of the Accountability Project.
I think any legitimate Republican in this race knows that a fight against Planned Parenthood, shutting down the government, is not going to work in any Republican candidate's favor.
And if you see half of the party, 80% of the party under the age of 50, the future of the party, who are demanding reform, a group of movements who are all unified under this idea of challenging money and the status quo, you know, I think that they're going to have to start paying attention to that.
Smart politicians start with where they really want to go, and then they compromise to the center. I gotta say, Bernie Sanders, he's been in office for over 30 years, from the Congress to the Senate. He does know how to work with the other side. He has negotiated more bills than any other Democratic congressman or senator in office.
Which only means you are dumber than someone who has not gone to school.
I don't know about that. 1 in 3 citizens can't pass a citizen test, but people who are coming to America and become citizens who may not speak English as their first language are passing citizens tests. So we have an issue here that goes beyond like what language somebody speaks. It really has to do with investing in Americans.
So how about having a literacy test?
Well, it's against the law. It violates the 14th and the 25th Amendment. It's against the 1965 Voting Rights Act. You know, it totally does. Courts have ruled this.
And a lot of that message, I think, is going to be about Hillary Clinton being held to the fire about policies that she's voted for in the past that have hurt Latinos, have hurt African Americans, have been in favor of Wall Street, sent us into the recession, and against a lot of the policies of the Clinton administration. As much as she wants to separate herself from her husband, she's running a campaign against his record.
We are setting the precedent. Right now, this platform is being labeled as progressive. There are many people in this audience back there who do not agree with that, because the language has been weak, and it's code. And it's code because this is a living platform for the Wall Street lobbyists who are now owning our party. We are no longer the social progressives, the FDR progressives. We are the Wall Street progressives. And if we want to stand up against Citizens United like we are all campaigning on, this is what we need to pass. This needs to be all over our platform. And if every single person in here votes for it, you're a Democrat. If one person votes against it, you're not a Democrat.
He has taken advantage of all these things that he's shouting out against right now. He has taken full advantage of. So, you know, listen, if he's running against Hillary Clinton, then maybe there's a possibility he could pull some Democratic support.
If there's one thing we've learned from Donald Trump, it's that he's a master at message. He knows the demographics so well, and he knows how to speak to those demographics. So if he does win make it to the general election and win the nomination on the Republican side, I think Democrats should be very fearful, because he's going to be able to solidify the white working class vote. He's been able to communicate to them in a different way than Bernie Sanders has.
Listen, I mean, to dismiss the millennial woman is not the way to engage them. The problem with the millennial feminists is that they don't feel included in the process. They feel that the institution of the Democratic Party has been running candidates that are out of touch with their concerns and their needs, and they weren't there to fight for them in those key moments because, you know, they were more concerned with winning. They were more concerned with working with the other side. Well, you know, working with the other side is very important, but you still have to have a backbone. And so from my perspective as a Bernie supporter, you know, I support Bernie because he's attacking the root cause of income inequality, the root cause of gender inequality, and you know, and other forms of inequality, and that's Wall Street. Wall Street's campaigning against equal pay.
A group of feminist leaders who've been very successful in paving the path for us, and we're very grateful for that. The problem is that there's not a lot of inclusivity, and I think that their definition of feminism is very different than the millennial definition of feminism, because the problems have changed. You know, we still face problems, not the same problems. A lot of them are muted and a little bit more difficult to address, but we still face problems, and we're addressing them. In fact, we've rebranded feminism.
The events in Iowa and in New Hampshire are white because Iowa and New Hampshire are white. So when you look at events of Hillary's in other places where she has
74-year-old
strikingly, she has 74 women support, but she also has the African American support. She has Latino support. And listen, I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter, and I understand that he is a millennial trapped in a 74-year-old's body. He embodies everything that they believe in.
He's changed the way presidential politics has been run for the past 30 years. He has made it the People's Party again. The Democratic Party used to be the People's Party.
Party. And somewhere in the early 80s, we decided to change course. And in order to keep up with the Republicans, to have an arms race with the Republicans, we started raising money and really selecting candidates that had name ID and the best ability to fundraise. And that's built an ecosystem in the establishment where people are invested in the business of fundraising and the candidates, and not as much of the ideas.
You've got an inspector general who sent a letter to Congress. Congress does not have access. These are people on the Senate Intelligence Committee who have never been able to read this type of email, ever. The other thing is that these emails were not deemed classified at the time, which is a very common instance where later emails are noted classified. And the last thing is that these emails were forwarded New York Times articles about a classified program. So Hillary Clinton never wrote anything, responded to anything. She simply forwarded around an email that was passed around the world in the New York Times article about its own program.
Basically what a progressive is somebody who has a backbone, who's been able to stick to the issues of the Democratic Party in line with the majority of the Democratic Party and what they care about over their career. And for millennials in particular, which is where I see this battle for the soul of the Democratic Party existing between generations, millennials don't care about labels, they care about backbone, they care about authenticity. So when they see the alternative to Bernie Sanders changing her positions on a few key issues, that raises a red flag. That's why women, millennials, are backing Bernie Sanders, especially because the Democratic Party is more progressive, 70% more progressive than it was 10 years ago.
The business model is broken in our party. We look for candidates who can raise the most money, and those also happen to be the candidates that probably don't have as much experience in their communities. They're not always community organizers or activists or understand the issues as much, and then we wonder why we can't pass things in Congress.
Hey.
Oh my God. Oh my
okay.
God.
The funny thing is, I actually thought it was Roger Ailes for a second.
It is Roger Ailes.
Hey, Roger, stay away from the women, okay? I'm gonna. Okay, don't get anywhere near Nomi.
This organization that did this faux organization that did this, was a group of right-wing activists who have previously called for people to assassinate abortion providers. They illegally created these videos. They taped these videos in California without consent, and they heavily doctored over 3 hours worth of video content.
But here's my question.
Populism only matters so much in presidential primaries. It's really unfortunate the way that primaries are run. They're run by parties. They're not run by the FEC. There's no laws really surrounding them, unfortunately, except for party rules. And those party rules are murky. The problem is Donald Trump has not been friendly to the party. So, that populism only takes him so far in the campaign. And now you're seeing, as we see, the organization behind maybe Paul Ryan, some sort of fresh face, as Karl Rove likes to say, that they're actively unifying to challenge Donald Trump. Democrats that voted for Barack Obama, that didn't go with Hillary Clinton. I mean, we have to remember, these are the people that he brought into the coalition that now are voting for Bernie Sanders. But guess who's second choice? Donald Trump. That has to freak Hillary Clinton out. If she doesn't get white working class voters, we're done. We're done.
Let me tell you something.
This entire election is a referendum against being told who to support. The establishment has been stuffing candidates down their throats for years, and they're upset. They're voting against their interests. Donald Trump gets up there and he says, I like fair trade. I don't like free trade. I support Planned Parenthood. I want to be fair on Israel. Those are things that the Republican base doesn't agree with. But they're so into his brand, they've bought into him, that they're not going to surrender. Why? Because he stands up to the bullies of the GOP. This party is a very different party. I mean, 50% of the party, almost 50% of the party, sided with Senator Sanders. You have a whole new wave of progressives entering this party. So I think the choice of Senator King may have been strategic in a more conventional way. It didn't do anything to help excite the base that really needs to turn out to defeat Donald Trump, to unify the party. And I think that she needs to do a little bit more work at this point to really listen, get on the ground, hear what their concerns are, and actually change some of her policies, not just on the platform, but the internal rules of the party. And the Rules Committee is actually meeting right now to discuss these things. Our country was built off of this. This is why all of our families
Letting
have come
in refugees
over.
from Syria?
Bringing in refugees from all over the world who come from conflict zones, who are searching for freedom. The reality is that this is a drop in the bucket. When Germany, which is a quarter of the size of our economy, is bringing in 800,000 Syrians a year, and we're bringing in, at this point, in 2013, we only had 36 Syrians come in. Now it's up to a couple hundred a month. Or they can come in here on temporary visas, humanitarian visas. And that's really what I think people are looking at right now. This is a crisis which we were very much a part of. The instability in the Middle East, not totally responsible for, but very much a part of. So we have to look at it like we owe it to the world to create stability. And this is part of that process.
So in
I mean, this is just an obvious one here. You have Bush, who's basically trying to reinvent history. He's really in a tough position right now. He has no foreign policy stance. Let's begin with that. He has no plans. All he has is criticisms of Clinton. And he seems to ignore the fact that everybody knows this. We got into the war in Iraq because of his brother. There's a difference between political experience and establishment. You know, you need to be a skilled politician to be able to negotiate with an opposing party, to work with the Senate, to work with the Congress as a president, to understand how to negotiate overseas. There's quite a difference between Donald Trump, who is an egomaniacal self-funder, who's trying to reform or tear apart the Republican Party to his own benefit, and Bernie Sanders, who's really a reflection of the majority of the Democratic Party right now and where the Democratic Party is going.
Bernie is fueled not by Bernie Sanders and cutting deals with the DNC. He's fueled by a movement. 80% of progressives and Democrats and progressive-leaning independents under the age of 50 support Bernie Sanders. That number should shock the DNC. You know, as a Bernie Sanders supporter, as a Democrat, I can assure you that I will vote Democratic, but I can't ensure that a bunch of independents who have no brand loyalty will. And if you want to break down the numbers, you know, they're worried about Hillary winning with superdelegates. Well, 58% of superdelegates are DNC members, and of those DNC members, the majority are men and white. Hillary Clinton doesn't want to win based on one superdelegate equaling 10,000 votes. What they don't want to talk about is how they've lost 69 House seats, 13 Senate seats, 910 state legislative seats, 11 governorships since 2008. Yet they're raising more money than ever. Where is that money going?
Yeah.
It's a centralized party. It's not focused on the grassroots. They're not picking good leaders anymore. And they want to talk about how we're not able to compromise. Well, maybe they should start looking for candidates who have real leadership rather than great salesmen.
And it's very American. I mean, free and open press is essential to our democracy. And if he's playing this populist and he's the spokesperson for the people, as he's trying to make himself appear to be, then, you know, this is very disingenuous because it's anti-democratic. But the reality here is that it's not the establishment that's controlling the message. It's Donald Trump, the maestro, the puppet master, who's controlling the media. He's playing them against each other. He's pitting one against another. He's not going, you know, on the debate stage and then holding another event, which is aired on a competing network.
Right.
He knows how to master the media and this conversation. Unfortunately, his base doesn't understand that he's playing them. He has negotiated more bills with the other side than any other Democrat, including Hillary Clinton. This is a man who really knows how to work with the other side. He might be campaigning in poetry, but he will be governing in prose. If he suspends his campaign, he can no longer have the Rules Committee meetings. The delegates can't vote in a roll call at the convention, which really is what pushes the Democratic Party the way he wants it to go. And that's what it's been since the beginning. I don't think he knew. I don't think his supporters knew. I don't think anyone knew how big this revolution would grow. And the reality is we had half of the support of that platform meeting, which didn't even exist before. Usually these platform meetings are a bunch of like Democratic Party leaders and hacks. Yet we had a bunch of activists and revolutionaries come in and change the platform.